We're going to work on finishing up the H-type bobbin as well as positioning it and changing the scale of this to be a bit more accurate. Really the only thing we need to add in is this bolt that goes all the way through and connects these pieces together. And then we need to scale and position these appropriately around the rim. So the first thing we're going to do is scale this piece to be a bit more realistically accurate. So we're just going to go back to our Blender file, we're going to go to this layer, and what we want to do is just right click to select this, and we're going to have to apply these modifiers in order to do it, because if we were just to scale this now, you can see it's not going to work like this. So in object mode for now we're just going to apply these and we'll add them in later, so just click apply and apply. So the radius of this for the front wheel is 365 millimeters, or the diameter actually is 365 millimeters, and the rear wheel is 356. But we're just going to do the front wheel dimensions at this point. So if we go into edit mode by pressing tab and we go to vertex select, since we centered our object around the Blender world center, we can tell the radius of this object by going from here straight up and going to the top point at the top. So if we just select this vertex and click on this to open this up, or press the N key and then just go to the top here, if we look at our Z value, that's going to give us from here to here, so that's basically going to give us the radius of this. And we're actually going for the diameter, which is of course the entire thing. So the radius is half of it, so this is going to be half of it. But what we want is so we're just going to get out our little calculator here, is we want 365 millimeters. But obviously this is a lot bigger than 1.7, so what we're going to do is we're going to move the decimal point a couple places and make this a bit more easier to deal with in the Blender world. So we're going to do 3.65, so I'm going to clear this and do 3.65 would be our radius here, and then you're going to divide it by 2 because, or actually this is the diameter, and we're going to divide it by 2 to get the radius. So the value we want for the Z value is 1.825, and this is our current value. So it would be this times what equals this, and in order to solve that function it would be 1.825 divided by this number. So we're going to do 1.825 and we're going to divide that by this number. So I'm just going to hover my mouse over this and do Control C. That's going to copy that number, and then I'm going to do Control V to paste it. I've already done my division thing, so then do Control V, paste it here and press enter, and that's going to give you some crazy value. So you're just going to right click and copy this, and then we're going to go back to Blender and we're going to press A twice, and we're going to do S, Shift X to exclude the x-axis, and do Control V to paste that value and press enter. So now if we've done everything correctly, this top point here, as I talked about before, should be the exact value we're looking for. So it should be that 1.825 that we had previously by doing this divided by 2. So in this calculator, I just went down here, searched for calculator, and this is on Windows 10. If you don't have this, just use whatever calculator you have available and then paste the value in. So that is now the correct radius of the front wheel. There are a lot of other dimensions that I'm not sure about because I wasn't able to find the dimensions online for this specific rim. Like, I found a bunch of dimensions for other disc brakes, but this one I couldn't find the exact dimensions. Like, for example, a lot of times or the numbers that you would be interested in are like the distance from here to here, you know, how far out this part sticks out, and just the radius of this is another one, or the diameter of this is another one, and how far out the diameter of this is. So there's a lot of values that I wasn't able to find, so if you can find them, you would want to make adjustments to all these other parts to make them realistic values, but for this, all I was able to find is the actual diameter, so that's the only one we changed. Anyway, moving on, we're going to be making the bolt for this piece. So just tab into object mode, we're going to go to a new layer. I'm going to go to this layer. We're going to go to File, we're going to go to User Preferences, Add-ons. We're going to left click here, type in Bolt, and turn on this Bolt Factory add-on. Make sure it has a check mark, and then close this. You're going to go to Add, you're going to go to Mesh, and choose Bolt. At this point, we're going to have to change pretty much all these values. The only one I didn't change, or the only two I didn't change, were these two. So I'm going to give you a quick view of which values I used exactly. So right here, these are all the values I used exactly. So go ahead and start changing them. If you want to, you can move this up or down. Like it starts out down here, you can left click and drag this up if you want to, so you can see all the values. But these are the values that I used, and you should get a result like this. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'm going to change these values on my actual project here, and you should do the same, and when we're done we should have this result. Now that we're done changing all the values here, we can press period on the number pad to focus in on this. And we want to make some changes to this because the top of this is actually not the correct way it should be. So we're going to tab into edit mode. And we're actually going to delete some stuff, and you'll also notice that there's some gaps here between the top and bottom. So we're going to alt right click, and we're going to do delete and choose vertices. We're going to do Control R, left click, and bring this up. The top of this is actually really messed up, so we're just going to delete all of it. So we're going to alt right click, do delete, and choose vertices. And then we're going to delete the rest of these pieces that are at the top. So just alt right click, alt and shift right click, and then delete these. Then we're going to alt right click here, and we're going to bring this up on the z-axis, hold control and snap it to this point. And we want to delete this here as well, so we're going to alt right click, delete. And actually we're going to delete this entire thing here, so we're just going to select the vertex and do Control L and then delete and choose vertices. Then we're going to alt right click here, we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale this out. And we'll go to about there, then we can do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this up some. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale this down a little bit. This will be a nice supporting edge. And then finally we're going to do 7 for top view. And we're going to select a couple of these vertices, and we're just going to hold down the F key. And that should fill it in with all quads. So now in object mode we can turn on smooth shading. We still need to fix some of the shading here, so we're going to go to face select, alt right click, and then do I to do an inset here. Do the same here, alt right click, I to do an inset. And that should be good. If you want to, you can alt right click and do the same here, do I for an inset, and correct the shading here as well. So everything should be looking nice. Next, what we're going to do is put this together with this other piece here. So we're going to duplicate this, do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, press M to move it to a new layer, select this layer. So now it's on this layer. We're going to tab into edit mode, Z for wireframe, A twice, S to scale this up quite a bit. What we want to do is have the screw part be just about the same radius as the rest of this, or this circle here around this nut. So you just want to scale it up until the screw part is pretty much touching the nut right there, but not going too far through it. So something like that's probably fine. Then the other thing is we want this part to be on the bottom. So we're going to do R, Y, and 180 and press enter. And then bring this down on the Z-axis. This part of the screw should be sticking out just a little bit. And that should be fine. If you want to scale this up slightly just to make it look a little bit nicer. So now what we can do is take all these objects and duplicate them and bring them to the other layer. So we're going to press A twice, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, press M, and move it to this layer here. That's the layer with our disc brake. So now what we want to do is join all these pieces together. The only thing we don't want to join together is this. You can actually hide it if you want to with H, and then do A to select everything. Shift and right click, and then do Control J, and then do Alt H to unhide this. Select this piece, do Tab into edit mode, A twice, S to scale this down. I'm going to hide these empties here, so I'm going to select them and do H to hide them in object mode. I'm going to bring this out a bit, and we want to rotate it on the Y-axis, so we're going to do R, Y, then 90 and press enter. And then just bring it into position here. Just bring it straight up and only use like the Z and the X. You don't want to use the Y-axis right now. So we're going to bring it in like this, so it's almost touching there. And maybe bring it up a little. The other thing we need to do in this case is to have this part actually on the bottom. So we're going to do R, then X, and 180, and press enter. And that'll put this piece on the bottom. I'm going to scale this up quite a bit, because it needs to be pretty big actually. And another thing I'm going to do is actually bring some of these upward. So what I'm going to do is do 3 for side view, Z for wireframe, and select one of these vertices, B to box select the rest. We actually want to deselect anything over here, so you just want this little loop right here, and bring these in some. Then you can do S and then Y to scale it out a little bit if you feel you need to. So we now have this. The only other thing left to do is this may need to be pulled further back depending on how you scaled it. So we're going to go to edit mode, switch to vertex select. You can do 1 on the number pad if you want for front view. Z for wireframe, select one of these vertices, B to box select, get the rest of them, and bring this out. Then what you want to do is just grab it on the X-axis, hold Control, snap it to this point, and that'll make it flush to that point there. And I think this circle is probably a bit too big, so what I'm going to do is do Z for wireframe, and we actually need to deselect this stuff here, so we're going to deselect that circle there, all the vertices in this circle, because we don't want to change the radius of this here because it will be different than the radius of it here. So we want to deselect those and keep them the same, and then you can just use S to scale this down as you need to. So maybe something more like that is a bit more appropriate, and then you want to snap it again on the X-axis. Or actually you want to first, we're going to snap it to this point here, and then we're going to select all these again, and at this point you want to snap it again to one of these points to make sure it has the same X value. So that should be it for that. We're just lining everything up is all we're really doing. And this is looking pretty good. If you wanted to, you could duplicate this and move it to one of these other layers here just to save it so that you have it saved without rotation. So you could do like Shift D right click to cancel, M to move it, and move it to maybe this layer because there's less stuff on this layer. So now we have this without any rotation. And then we're going to select this piece again, tab into edit mode, A twice, turn this to 3D cursor, Shift S, cursor to center, just to make sure it's in the center. 3 for side view, do R18 and press enter, because these are actually supposed to be halfway between these two pieces here. Then we're going to do Shift D, R36, press enter, and then do Shift R, and continue doing Shift R to repeat that until you have all these pieces here. And that should be it for the basics of this. We now have our H-type bobbins in place. We've scaled this, and everything is looking nice. So we're going to go ahead and save it. We're just going to go to File and Save. Thank you to our awesome Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter yourself, head on over to patreon.com/StephenBrooks. Thank you for your support.